Somewhere in Belgrade, in a quiet residential district called Zvezdara, there's a piece of footage that's been watched by tens of millions of people. It's dark, grainy, shot from a distance, the way most footage like this is shot. Someone filming from a window or across the street, too far away to get a clear look, too unsettled to get any closer. In it, a woman stands alone in the middle of an empty street at night, moving in slow, strange, almost ritualistic motions, swaying, spinning, something between a dance and a seizure difficult to look away from precisely because it's difficult to explain. The story that grew up around that footage says you should never approach her, never call out to her, never let her know you've seen her at all, because if she notices you watching, the story goes, she stops dancing and she starts running towards you instead. Fast, too fast, and in her hand, according to almost every version of this story, there's a knife. They call her the Serbian dancing lady. And unlike a lot of the legends we've covered on this channel, this one isn't centuries old, passed down through generations of oral tradition. This one is barely 5 years old, born on the internet, spread by video, and still, right now, actively growing. Tonight, I want to walk you through where this story actually came from, what's genuinely documented versus what the internet built on top of it, and why, even now, people are still afraid to look out their windows at night in certain parts of Belgrade. Let's begin. To really understand this legend, you have to separate it into two distinct timelines, because that's genuinely how it unfolded. First as a small, regional news story, and only years later as a global viral phenomenon. It starts in late September of 2019 in the Zvezdara municipality of Belgrade. An ordinary, quiet residential area. Tree-lined streets, apartment blocks, nothing that would normally attract this kind of attention. A local outlet called Serbia Today published a short piece describing a video that had been circulating locally. A woman dancing alone in the street late at night, moving in a way one report described as resembling traditional Serbian folk dance, except performed with a strange, unsettling intensity that made it feel less like a performance and more like something involuntary. That original footage was uploaded to YouTube, where it slowly accumulated views over the following years. Modest numbers by internet standards, nothing close to viral, but enough to keep the story circulating in certain corners of the internet, especially among people already drawn to unexplained footage content. According to some of the earliest local reporting, residents in the area had genuinely called the police after spotting the woman, describing her as behaving erratically and, in some accounts, carrying a knife. Officers reportedly searched the area but were unable to locate her. Beyond that initial report, there's no solid documentation of who she was, why she was there, or what happened to her afterward. She simply appears in that first piece of footage and then, as far as any verified account goes, disappears from the record entirely. That gap, the complete absence of any follow-up, any name, any resolution, is exactly the kind of empty space folklore loves to fill. For a few years, that's more or less where the story sat. A strange local incident, a handful of grainy videos, a modest cult following among people who specifically search out unexplained footage online. Then, in early 2023, everything changed. A new clip, showing a woman dancing in that same eerie, jerking style, alone on a dark street, was posted to TikTok with a simple, ominous caption warning viewers to be careful. That single video went on to accumulate close to 100 million views. Not thousands, not millions, nearly 100 million people across the entire world watching the same few seconds of unexplained footage, many of them for the very first time. And once something reaches that kind of scale on a platform built entirely around short-form video and algorithmic spread, it stops behaving like a simple news story and starts behaving like something else entirely. A living, evolving piece of folklore. Except instead of spreading through years of oral retelling around a fire, it was spreading through comment sections, duets, and reaction videos, all within a matter of weeks. Academic researchers who study internet folklore have actually taken this legend seriously enough to write about it directly, describing what happened next as something called legend enactment. Rather than simply watching and being frightened by the footage, thousands of mostly young people began recreating it themselves, filming their own imitation, dancing lady videos, using the same eerie background music, staging their own sightings in dark streets and empty parking lots, turning a single unexplained video into an entire participatory trend. For a while, the trend was less about believing the legend was literally true and more about performing it. The same impulse that's driven ghost stories and campfire dares for as long as people have told them, just wearing a very modern outfit. Once a piece of footage like this reaches enough people, the internet does what it always does. It starts filling in the blanks the original video never answered. Who is she? Why is she dancing? What happens if you get close? The most detailed version of this backstory appears to have originated from posts on Reddit and other forums where users began attaching a name to her, Mira. In this elaborated version of the legend, she isn't simply a disturbed or dangerous woman. She's something closer to a supernatural entity entirely. Some tellings describe her as an ambassador of death, a figure said to require human sacrifices in order to resurrect a long-dead king of Serbia. It's an elaborate, almost mythological backstory, and it's worth being completely honest here. There's no historical or factual basis for any of it. No king matching that description. No documented ritual. It appears to be something invented largely from scratch, in the way internet lore often is, stitched together from vague references to older Slavic folklore in order to give a viral video the weight of an actual legend. And that's genuinely part of what makes this such an interesting case study, separate from whether you find the footage itself frightening. Older legends, the ones we've covered on this channel, Hanako-san, La Patasola, Aicha Kandisha, evolved slowly over generations, shaped by real cultural anxieties passed down through families and communities. The Serbian dancing lady evolved in the opposite direction and in a fraction of the time, starting with a single piece of ambiguous footage and having an entire mythology constructed around it afterward, collaboratively, by strangers online, in a matter of months rather than centuries. Some researchers and folklorists who studied Balkan storytelling traditions point out that this isn't entirely without precedent, though. Serbian and broader Balkan folklore has always been rich with figures like the Vila, spirit or fairy-like beings, often appearing as women, capable of blessing or cursing anyone who crosses their path, frequently associated with wild, uncanny movement and with places you're warned not to linger after dark. It's entirely possible that whoever first attached deeper mythology to this footage was drawing, consciously or not, on exactly that older tradition, dressing a modern viral video in the borrowed clothes of something much, much older. Like a lot of the legends we've covered, an actual set of rules eventually crystallized around the Serbian dancing lady. Informal, inconsistent, differing, depending on which corner of the internet you encountered them in, but repeated often enough that they've become something close to an accepted structure for the story. If you see her, most versions agree on this, you are not supposed to approach. You're not supposed to call out or try to get her attention or attempt to record her up close. Some versions say specifically that you should never let her realize she's being watched, because the instant she becomes aware of an observer, her slow, ritualistic dancing stops and something else begins. She turns, and she runs directly at whoever's watching her, faster than her strange, jerking dance ever suggested she could move, closing distance in a way that leaves no time to react. And in her hand, in nearly every telling, there's a knife. What happens if she reaches you is left, deliberately, almost entirely unanswered by the legend. Unlike older folklore, which usually commits fully to an ending, devoured, cursed, driven mad, dragged into another world, the Serbian dancing lady mythology mostly just stops there at the moment of the chase, letting your own imagination fill in whatever comes after, which, honestly, might be part of why it's proven so effective. A story with no ending is a story your brain never gets to fully close the door on. I want to share one particular account tied to this legend, the kind that's been shared and reshared across TikTok and Reddit threads discussing the phenomenon, presented, like most stories of this kind, as something that happened to the poster personally. As with the rest of this legend, there's no way to verify it, and it should be understood exactly the way you'd understand any piece of contemporary internet folklore. A story people tell because it feels true, whether or not it can be proven. I want to say up front that I only half believed in her before that night. I'd seen the videos, obviously. Everyone had. At that point, it felt impossible to be on TikTok in early 2023 and not have seen at least one clip claiming to be her. But I genuinely thought of it the way I thought of most viral horror content. Something to watch late at night, feel a little unsettled by, and then close the app and forget about. I was staying with a friend in Belgrade that spring, in an apartment not too far from Zvezdara, the district where the whole thing supposedly started. We joked about it once, early in the trip. Half serious, the way you joke about things you don't quite want to admit make you nervous. She told me some of her neighbors genuinely avoided walking home alone after a certain hour ever since the videos went viral again. Not because they necessarily believed in some resurrected king or human sacrifice or any of the more elaborate internet lore, just because enough strange footage had come out of that specific area that a general, low-grade unease had settled over it. I remember walking back from a friend's place late one night, alone, the streets emptier than I expected for that hour. It was quiet in the specific way certain neighborhoods get quiet after midnight. Not silent exactly, but muted, distant, like the whole city had turned its volume down. That's when I saw her. Or someone. Standing near the end of a side street, maybe half a block away, moving. I want to be careful about how I describe this, because I know exactly how these stories are supposed to go, and I don't want to make it sound more dramatic than what I actually experienced. It wasn't a clear, obvious sighting. It was distant, dim, hard to make out clearly under streetlights that weren't particularly bright to begin with. A figure, swaying, turning slowly in place, the way you'd expect from the videos everyone had already seen 100 times by that point. I stopped walking. I remember my first instinct wasn't fear. Exactly. It was closer to disbelief, the specific kind of disbelief you feel when something you've only ever encountered as an internet joke suddenly seems to be standing in front of you in real life. I didn't approach. I want to be completely honest about that. Some instinct, whether shaped by the legend or simply basic caution about strangers behaving strangely at night, kept me rooted exactly where I was. I didn't call out. I didn't take out my phone to film, even though some reflexive part of my brain immediately wanted to. I just watched, from that distance, for what felt like a long time but was probably closer to 30 seconds. And then the figure stopped moving, completely still, facing away from me the entire time, and then, all at once, turning toward me. I couldn't make out a face at that distance under that lighting, but I felt, with a certainty I can't fully explain or justify, that whoever or whatever it was had noticed me watching. I didn't wait to find out what came next. I turned and walked quickly back the way I'd come, taking a longer route rather than passing anywhere near that side street again. I didn't run. I want to be honest about that too, because running felt in the moment like it might somehow make things worse, like it would confirm to whatever was behind me that I was exactly the kind of person worth chasing. I got back to my friend's apartment and didn't tell her what I'd seen until the next morning. When I did, she went quiet for a moment and then told me flatly that she wasn't surprised, that this was more or less exactly the kind of thing her neighbors had been describing for months. I don't know what I actually saw that night. It could have been someone genuinely disturbed, out walking alone, moving strangely for reasons that had nothing to do with any legend at all. It could have been someone deliberately performing the legend, the way so many people were doing across the city that spring, chasing a viral moment of their own. But I haven't walked home alone at night in Belgrade since, and I don't think I will again. It's worth being direct with you here, the way I try to be with every legend on this channel. There is no credible evidence that the Serbian dancing lady is a supernatural being. There's no verified connection to a resurrected king, no documented ritual, No confirmed pattern of attacks or disappearances tied to her. The elaborate mythology. The name Mira, the human sacrifices. The ancient purpose appears to have been constructed almost entirely after the fact, built up around a single ambiguous video by an internet audience eager to give an unexplained clip a deeper story. What is genuinely documented is narrower and, in its own way, still unsettling. A real report from 2019 describing a woman behaving erratically at night in a specific Belgrade neighborhood, carrying what witnesses believed was a knife, who local police were reportedly unable to locate. Beyond that single incident, everything else, the viral resurgence, the name, the backstory, the rules about never letting her see you watching, is internet folklore assembled collaboratively in real time by an audience that has never fully agreed on what any of it actually means. That doesn't necessarily make the legend less worth taking seriously as a piece of culture, though. Researchers studying digital folklore have pointed out that stories like this one function almost identically to the ghost stories and cautionary tales that came before them. They just spread faster, and they let their audience participate directly in a way older folklore never could. Every teenager filming their own dancing lady video in an empty parking lot was doing, in essence, exactly what children have always done, standing outside a bathroom stall or knocking on a cursed door. Testing the boundary of a story, half for the thrill of it, half to see if anything answers back. What makes the Serbian dancing lady worth studying, beyond the simple fear of the footage itself, is how quickly it moved from a local, half-forgotten news story to a piece of global digital folklore watched by tens of millions of people, most of whom will never set foot anywhere near Zvezdara. Older legends took generations to spread that far, if they ever did at all, carried slowly from town to town, community to community, shaped and reshaped along the way. This one did it in a matter of months, riding the exact mechanics that make short-form video platforms so effective. Ambiguity, low resolution, a caption just vague enough to suggest danger without confirming anything, and an algorithm perfectly built to reward exactly that kind of unresolved tension. And maybe that's the real story here, underneath the dancing figure in the invented mythology. We haven't actually left the age of folklore behind, the way it might sometimes feel like we have. We've just built faster machinery for it. The same fear that used to travel by firelight and whispered warning now travels through a phone screen at nearly the speed of light. And somewhere in Belgrade, a piece of grainy footage from 2019 became proof to an entire generation that the old instinct to be afraid of what moves alone in the dark never really went anywhere at all. So if you ever find yourself walking home late at night, in Belgrade or anywhere else, and you see someone standing alone in the street moving in a way that doesn't quite make sense to you, don't call out, don't get closer, don't let her know you're watching. Just turn quietly and walk the other way. If this one gave you chills, let me know in the comments whether you'd seen the original footage before tonight, and subscribe for more true legends and viral horror stories from around the world.